series I'm calling Our Hungry Hearts. To be perfectly honest, I'm entering into this series as part of my own spiritual exploration. For some time now, I've been noticing that there is a longing within me to feel more deeply and consistently my oneness with Spirit. Not just believe it, not just have faith in it, but feel it. There seems to be a sort of siren call emanating from my soul. And yet, I have a strong sense that this call is not only intensely personal, it is also universal. Perhaps some of you also feel yourself standing on the threshold of possibility. Like, as good as life is now, there is something more. This longing has led me to renew my acquaintance with a unity program called The Quest, a journey of spiritual discovery. From the first read of the introduction, it spoke directly to me. And I'll be sharing a good bit of that introduction with you this morning. Perhaps you'll find it meaningful as I did. So it begins this way. It is the desire of every human being to feel he or she can begin anew. In the Gospel of John, Jesus says to his disciples, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born anew, he cannot enter the kingdom of God." Over the years, I've come to place great stock in a certain form of restlessness, which I call hunger in the heart and soul. I know it to be a call to something greater, which I am usually unable to name. It's different from the desire to learn something new. It's not more knowledge I long for. It has to do with deeper wisdom and greater intimacy with Spirit. Many of us have experienced precious moments when we could viscerally feel our oneness with God. When we knew in our gut that every single thing in our lives and in the world was in perfect order and always has been. My desire is to feel this more consistently, beyond all doubt, in a way that steadies me in the midst of a storm, makes me clear-eyed and discerning in the face of confusion, holds my heart open no matter what, and fills my soul with peace. Imagine such a life. We're told to dream big. Well, I am. And we're told that the joy is in the journey. And I say yes to that. I believe it, don't you? Now, I know I'm not unique. This longing can arise in anyone, at any time, at any age, no matter how long we've been on a conscious spiritual journey. You know, don't you? It's an axiom that the beginning of every epic adventure finds the hero or heroine on the brink of major change. Life seems a bit humdrum. He or she feels a little bit unfulfilled in some ways. There is some vague yearning for an elusive something more, something that the quest calls beyond the edges of thought. Then one day, the hero or heroine receives a call. It can come in the form of a dramatic experience or a persistent inner whisper. For a lot of us, major life transitions, like the loss of a job or a close relationship, or perhaps a serious illness, signal the beginning of a new quest. Or maybe it's just a sudden inner shift that does it. I remember such a moment. I had no conscious intention to leave my church in Greensboro. Yet one day a message came across my email asking if anyone might be interested in becoming the next spiritual leader of Crystal Coast Unity. It sounds so poetic to say, but my heart just leapt. I knew that call was for me. I don't know how I knew, I just did. And I also had no idea to make it happen, mind you. I think one of the first things I thought was, people are going to kill me in Greensboro if I do this. Well, they didn't do that. Your inner call may or may not be to a major life transition. But one thing for sure, all quests involve a journey. Think of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table in search of the Holy Grail. Think of Dorothy's search for the wizard. Something else that all quests have in common is that the hero thinks he's off to search for one thing and discovers something far greater in the process. I thought my call was to semi-retirement at the beach. Now I see that what drew my soul here was longing for a deeper connection with myself, with friends, and with my God. In every great quest, the hero or heroine meets obstacles and challenges that he or she must overcome in order to discover the inner resources sufficient for the next step. Scripture is full of these stories, like Jonah swallowed by the whale, or Daniel thrown in the lion's den. Our search for the elusive something more will no doubt lead us into, again, what the quest calls terra incognita, unknown territory. Early map makers drew dragons and sea monsters in these areas. These frightful creatures were graphic expressions of the map maker's conviction that great dangers awaited those foolish enough to venture into unexplored regions. Nothing was known about them, and so the depiction of monsters was designed to instill fear in the explorer's heart. At one time, virtually all of the New World, North and South America, was terra incognita. But what rich resources these lands offered to those courageous enough to explore and claim them. While our next great adventure may entail significant life changes, most of the monsters and dragons we'll encounter will likely be inside us. We will come face to face with our fears and worries and perceived limitations. Somehow, it seems to help to give those dragons a name. So what is the monster that causes you to tremble and feel like turning back? Can you think of a name for it? Is it fear of financial lack? Of personal rejection? Of loss? Of loneliness? Of self-doubt? Well, maybe if we travel this unknown territory together, we can face those boogeymen down and move beyond them. There is a new, unexplored world in every one of us, rich in resources, offering vast stores of happiness and abundance. But the journey into this land is a spiritual quest into the farthest reaches of our souls, for that is where the prize is hiding. As with those ancient explorers, there may be some fear of venturing into these places. Our lives may not be perfect now, but at least we're beginning to know where the dragons live. And if we're not comfortable with them, at least we are familiar with them and have developed some strategies for coping with them. But the truth is, these dragons and monsters must be slain. There can be no true growth unless some sort of limitation or limited thinking is allowed to die. All that stuff, remember, that we burned in that bowl last New Year's Eve? That's the stuff that's holding us back. So consider this to be the fine print. If you're ready to dive into a new adventure, well, fasten your seatbelt. Life is calling. Greater life is calling. And it's bound by its nature to require surrender of some outworn belief or attitude or way of thinking. There's usually, too, a gap that opens up between back then and what's next. And this gap can be pretty uncomfortable. We're definitely not in control in the gap. We have said yes to God knows what, and we feel pretty vulnerable. But we can take heart. We can look back at earlier times like this. We can read stories about the adventures of other heroes and be reminded that just below the fine print there is a promise in big, bold letters, and it says, with God, all things are possible. Okay, then off we go. Of course, not everyone here this morning may be up for an epic adventure this time. But if this is what you're thinking right now, I would ask you to pause. While I do believe in the power of divine timing, it's worth a bit of reflection to make sure that it's not fear talking or self-doubt. My not-so-lovely litany goes something like this. Maybe I'm too old to change. I don't have the energy I used to. Perhaps I've already done my best work. But lately I've noticed that this conversation is not coming from my heart. It is coming from my ego mind, which seems to be holding on to the belief that a hero's journey must involve doing more or achieving more. Seems I've been confusing the call of spirit with personal ambition. I hope this resonates for some of you. Honestly, I no longer feel the need to do more, or have more, or even contribute more. My heart's desire now is to be more. Please promise you won't call the men with the white coats. But it's though I can hear Spirit whispering, let go. Come higher. Go deeper. Feel more. Think less. Love more. Open. Your call may be different. It may be something material, maybe a physical healing or reconciliation with an estranged loved one or freedom from an addiction or a new job or greater prosperity. It doesn't really matter because it's all about growth. And daring to change and grow is the thing. It's what distinguishes a hero or a heroine from the average guy or girl. And it's a circular process, really. Transformation of outer conditions will surely require spiritual growth. And spiritual transformation will surely affect outer conditions. So regardless of the starting point, every epic journey that is fueled by courage and lived wholeheartedly brings about a new way of seeing. In the end, the hero always comes to a more enlightened understanding of everything because he or she is now operating from a higher consciousness. Though we are all unique, deep down I believe we all have the same heart's desire to know God in a very intimate and personal way and to experience the power of God in our lives. With this comes the sure and certain knowledge that we are never alone. that with Spirit as our guide, we will live the life today that we are meant to be living, whether we're 25 or 85. Beyond having anything, into a whole new way of being that is more joyful and loving and awake and engaged and peaceful to the core. This is spiritual rebirth. And it can take a lifetime to develop or explode in our lives in a split second. With it comes the realization that we are more than flesh and blood, more than our degrees and titles, more than our possessions, more even than our relationships. The new birth of which Jesus spoke when he said, unless you are born again of water and the Spirit, you cannot enter the kingdom of God, takes place in the soul. And with it comes the realization that we are all part of some great cosmic force that created all things and powers the universe. Unity's first principle tells us that God's desire for each of us is absolute good. This is the foundational truth beneath the whole journey. God's good, you see, is not like human good. The meaning of spiritual good is not the same as material meaning. God's good is not conditional, it's absolute. It is not earned by what we do or how we act. It is not bound by our experience of sickness or lack or poor relationships or whatever other negative experience we've had in the past. God's good exists in the present moment and is always available in the now. And what that means is that every single moment of our life, the slate is clean, ready to be written on by each one of us in our own unique way. So for me, the bottom line is this. You and I are standing at possibility junction right now. We're standing at a crossroad where what was and what could be meet. And the only question to ask is, which road will I choose? Perhaps like me, you sometimes feel you're too old to change, or too young to venture out, or too poor or unworthy or sick to make the journey. But you know, none of this is the truth. They're just fears. No matter where we are at this moment, we are capable of expressing more good and experiencing more good because we are part of the creative energy of the universe, which is made up of absolute good. So what decision will you make? Do you want to feel your oneness with God more deeply? Do you want to feel the presence and power of Spirit in your life every minute of every day? Are you ready to live beyond doubt? These are not decisions we make once and be done with them. They're choices we'll make over and over again, each time we reach another junction. Every time we have to choose between then and now. Because the journey does not mean that life will be hunky-dory from now on. There may be days when we feel down and discouraged, when things seem to blow up in our faces. But guess what? These are precisely the time when we're meant to reach for each other and be reminded that God is present right here, right now, in the midst, and it's time to begin again. The great thing is we are allowed an unlimited number of times to pick ourselves up and start over. If you think about it, every hero or heroine on a quest makes many new beginnings before attaining the prize. Dorothy's yellow brick road was full of wonders, delights, and terrors. I especially identify with the time she and her companions went to sleep in a field of poppies. Falling back to sleep may be the most insidious dragon we have, don't you think? Best to sit next to someone on a Sunday morning who will give you an elbow in the ribs if it should happen. If we can honestly say that we want to know God more, and that we want God to be the power that fuels our life, then we have set ourselves up to accept more good than we have ever known before. And that's all any one of us needs to begin again, and again, and again. So it is. God bless you all.